One. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another small screen Star Wars. As always, I'm Julian Mush. I'm joined by Rachel Wilkinson.
Hello. And
we're going to be talking about The Bad Batch, Season 1, Episode 11, The Devil's Deal. Give me 2 seconds. I'm going to turn on. Actually, I found the 3 episodes. I went to the 3 episodes of the Ryloth arc in Clone Wars, and I'm going to play it behind me.
Gotcha.
Okay. Okay. So we're gonna, like I said, we're gonna be talking about The Bad Batch, Season 1, Episode 11, The Devil's Deal. If you are new to the show, welcome. We're gonna be breaking down the show, The Bad Batch, scene by scene here, and just giving our overall impressions and kind of talking about the way the story's playing out. I think this episode especially is we're gonna have a lot to cover, as it really kind of breaks the mold that the Bad Batch has kind of established up to this point.
Definitely. Yeah.
It's pretty shocking that we got to all the way up to the 11th episode before they completely changed the kind of the core framework of the show. So there's going to be a lot to talk about there. But before we do that, let me just remind everyone to follow us on all of our social media. So on Twitter, @TowerBabblecast, Facebook.com/TowerBabblecast. That's BABBLE, not the biblical version. And we actually record this live on YouTube, on Twitch, and on Twitter as well. So subscribe to us on there, and you can tune in as we record this live on Monday nights. I mean, it's summer. It used to be Sunday nights, and now it's Monday nights. It's just working out better that way. So yeah, you can tune into us there and actually chat with us live in the chat room. So let's dive into this. There's lots to cover. I do want to touch on a little bit of small screen Star Wars related news. So there's a little bit of news about the Book of Boba Fett. So what Tamora Morrison is, he's great because he's not good at keeping secrets. So
does he have Twitter?
I don't think he does.
No,
I feel like I would have seen his stuff retweeted before.
I'm like, where do you get all the hot gossip from Tamora Morrison?
Well, apparently from I think it's Empire had the scoop on this one.
Okay.
And so the show will apparently run adjacent to the Mandalorian timeline. We don't know exactly what that means. There's been lots of discussion around when exactly the Book of Boba Fett's going to take place. There's been rumors around flashbacks and maybe flash forward stuff like weird stuff. Like we really don't know, and so maybe take that with a grain of salt. But what is interesting is that, and this is coming from Collider this time, that Tamora Morrison said that there's a few directors involved in the show. So we already knew that Robert Rodriguez, who had done the Mandalorian episode that reintroduced Boba Fett, he's already involved. He's basically the showrunner here. But we have some returning directors from the Mandalorian as well. So Bryce Dallas Howard is going to be returning, as well as Dave Filoni.
That makes sense.
Yeah, so they're going to direct a couple episodes. Not surprising there, but what is surprising, I think, is that they've been speaking about the Book of Boba Fett. It's not it's not the sequel to season 2 of The Mandalorian. It's not the sequel, but you bring in a lot of the same directors. These are all directors from that show. You kind of getting the sense that it's going to have a very similar tone and very similar feel. We don't know for sure yet, but when you kind of speak out of both sides of your mouth, don't worry, it's not going to be The Mandalorian season 3 with a different name, but also we have all the same creative talent involved, and we're dealing with another Mandalorian with a helmet on. So I don't know what to make of that necessarily. I am excited to see what Robert Rodriguez can do with more episodes. I wasn't in love with his Mandalorian episode, but having watched now more of Rodriguez's stuff, I watched what the heck is that movie called? Crap. Anyway, it'll come to me. I watched one of his older movies from the 90s. And if you can bring a little bit more of that style, I think Desperado is what I watched.
Remind me which episode he did of The Mandalorian?
So he's the one who, when Boba Fett finally gets his armor back, that's his episode.
Oh, Fat Boba.
Yeah. Yes.
His ill-fitting armor.
Yeah, and he's wearing like the robes underneath.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, I didn't mind that episode, but yeah, I remember you not liking it. I remember you thinking it looked ugly and the ships looked bad.
I didn't think it looked great.
Yeah.
But that's not necessarily a gripe against Rodriguez.
No.
But knowing kind of more of his tone, and also kind of inferring some things from Boba Fett, and kind of knowing the show's about him, I think it's going to be good. Bryce Dallas Howard coming back is interesting because she's actually done some really good work on some of the action episodes. So in the first season, she did that episode with the Walker and those those dog face people. You know what I'm talking about?
Right. Yes.
Remember
Yes.
that?
Yes.
And then I can't remember which episode she did in the second season. I want to say the one with when Mando gets kicked into that tank and gets saved by the other Mandalorians. Remember whatever episode that is. I think that's hers. I don't know. Don't hold me to that. But having her involved is interesting. Some of the directors not coming back from season 2 of Mando kind of stand out by their absence. But obviously Dave Filoni being involved is interesting.
I was hoping to see some Taika Waititi, but I guess not.
Well, yeah. I mean, aren't we all hoping to see more Taika Waititi? He did actually. It's funny you mentioned he's in the news today because he's talking about how crazy Thor: Love and Thunder is going to be. He's basically saying it's the craziest movie he's ever made. It's crazy that they let him make it at all. So it's
interesting.
Yeah, so I'm really excited to see that, obviously. But so he's obviously caught up with Marvel stuff. But I think as he winds down on that, he's going to start working on his Star Wars project, and he'll probably have more time to maybe hop on behind the camera of maybe one of these episodes of TV. So anyway. That's Book of Boba Fett. We're going to keep an eye on it. It's still probably... I feel like we should be getting a trailer for it soon, but it might be not until the end of the Bad Batch. They might tease us with what's coming next after this, potentially. But they are done filming, so is my understanding. So we'll see. We shall see, or at least they're in the process of filming. One of the two. Okay. Let's talk about the Bad Batch. So, as I said, we've got the 3-part season 1 of the Clone Wars Ryloth arc playing behind me. We've been to Ryloth a lot, and this episode takes us back there. The logline is, as the seeds of rebellion ferment on an Outer Rim world, the Empire schemes to squash it, which might be their best logline this entire season, considering it's usually just the batch, blah blah blah. Yeah, and then so this is really cool. You gotta love the term ferment. The rebellion ferments. That's really good.
It is really good, cool. Actually.
Yeah. Yeah. On a Outer Rim world, this is kind of but the Outer Rim worlds are Tatooine and Ryloth. Those are the ones that people I think jump to first when they think of the Outer Rim. And Ryloth is really cool. So I'm really glad to be back here. And what makes it so exciting is that it was always more of a complex nature. The war always carried a more complex nature on Ryloth than it did on some of the other planets where the allegory was a little bit more on the nose.
Right.
So Ryloth had this kind of this state of trying to protect itself, taking on its protection onto its own shoulders and not trusting, the Republic or the Empire to kind of do that for them, right? So we kind of pick up there, having the Republic having finally earned the trust of the Twi'leks and the clone army kind of coming in to quote unquote win the war, right? And that's kind of where we pick up. And the opening shot is of the capital city, and I don't know if you saw this on Twitter, but there's a shot of that same capital city from the season 1 arc that's on behind me there, and compared to the shot that we get, and they are so different.
Oh yeah,
oh my god, they the same kind of general shape is basically present, and some of the major kind of architectural aspects. There's a couple archways and stuff, but other than that, it's like night and day different. It doesn't look. It looks like a completely new place.
Maybe they renovated in the very small. And once the war ended, they did a quick renovation.
Well, it's a really beautiful. They really set up these amazing establishing shots, right? And we've seen this a couple times. We saw this last week, I want to say, or the week before, as well. And it's this one's another gorgeous one, but because we have an establishing shot that's almost identical from season 1 of Clone Wars, it's really a great example of how far Lucasfilm animation has come from that time. It's it really looks like a pile of poop. Because it's a mountain. It looks just the emoji for the little poop pile emoji. That's what it looks like. And then this looks like this architectural wonder built into the side of a mountain. And you're okay, that's pretty cool. So, just got to call that out. And so Crosshair is there. We catch up with him, and he's keeping an eye on a crowd as they're kind of gathered in a square. We've now seen this a couple times now in the season as the Empire tries to, solidify its control in some of these Outer Rim planets, or some of these Separatist planets, like we saw last week. Was that last week with the walkers and the tank?
Yes, yeah, it was last week.
So we've now this idea of the people, and by the way, this is also happening on the streets of Cuba right now in the real world. So very similar, this is really kind of timely. So we've got this kind of unruly crowd, and Vice Admiral Rampart is there, our favorite Imperial, and he's concerned that despite a new refinery that they're building on Ryloth, which is supposed to bring all these wonderful jobs, which is is always supposed to make people happy,
right?
That the people are quote unquote troubled by their presence, right? And he's speaking with Ormfrey Ta. This is the big fat corrupt senator we've seen
he's
many times before. He is the worst, and he's kind of designed to play that kind of like the example of the corrupt politician.
I love how Wikipedia always calls him corpulent. It's a really good word.
Yeah. Well, okay. So he's not fat. He's corpulent.
He's corpulent.
He's he's just big boned.
Yeah.
It's funny because you don't really see a lot of fat Twi'leks.
Never. No.
No. Very.
I mean,
rarely.
other than what's his name?
Yeah, at the end of Mando.
Yeah, Mando.
Yeah, because he put on because he got a little
That's what happens when you get
the Hutts.
When you get power.
Yeah.
Well, isn't this Senator Ta friends with Jabba as well?
Probably because my understanding, my recollection is that the Hutts were kind of they were the scourge of Ryloth before the war started.
Gotcha.
Right. So we have Ormfrey Ta. He's played by Phil Lamar. Phil Lamar is a longtime great voice actor. He's played a million different things. For me, my recollection of him is from the Justice League animated series where he plays Green Lantern. Really, really great voice actor, and he does a great job here. All the voice actors are doing a great job here because they're all putting on this really kind of funny French accent, and it's not I don't think a realistic representation of what a French accent is. Like this is it's just a cartoon version.
Yeah, it's a strange kind of mix of French and something else. I'm not too sure whether it's, I don't know. I get like a little bit of French, but like kind of, do they speak
like a Cajun?
Cajun, almost. Yeah. I was just gonna say, don't they kind of? Isn't there like a Cajun French or like a Caribbean French?
Right. Yeah. So it's kind of I think something maybe like that. It's certainly not French Canadian.
No, no.
And
not Quebec, that's for sure.
No. But like it's fine. It's just like they just have a slightly different accent, and it just sticks out, especially when you have the voice actors who we know have done different voices. I mean, but to be fair, we have Hera come back, Vanessa Marshall voicing Hera again, and she's also longtime great voice actress.
Yeah, for sure.
Love her as Hera, and she's putting on her, because she's doing a younger version of Hera, and she's also using the accent. We've heard that accent before on Rebels, I think in one episode where she talks to her father.
Yeah, she gets all worked up and they get in a fight on the ship and her accent comes out. So it seems like it's something that she maybe kind of, when she gets older, kind of represses and hides a little bit, but then when she gets angry with her dad, it comes out again.
And anyway, so she's putting on this funny accent too, and it's like it really stands out, especially when you have these actors who are not French, like they're not French actors we're dealing with here. So I think anyway, it's just fun. It's fine. It's just one of those things you should call out. That's their version of. And it's obviously like the Imperials are all British, so
yeah,
most of them are. Anyway, so Ormfrey Ta's there. So is Cham Syndulla. So is Eleni Syndulla. These are the parents of Hera. But she's not present at this time. Although she does get a call out where she's like, Hera has other interests, right? Which I thought was very funny. And we also see that Gobi Glee, one of Cham's lieutenants, is in the crowd, and he's not looking very excited. And by the way, Crosshair has noted this. He's like, hey, that's Gobi's in the crowd. Yeah.
Yes.
So we also see that there's a clone captain with them. And we find out a little bit later that his name is Hauser.
Yeah.
So he gets a name. He has a very distinct scar and a distinct hairstyle.
I immediately liked him.
he's great. I think he's really, really great. I think he right away reminds you of Rex. I think in a lot of ways.
Well, yeah. I saw a meme today, and it was something about fans saying you can't make a character that we'll all like in just one episode. And then it's like Dave Filoni slaps dope hair, sexy scarred, painted armor onto a clone. And everyone's like, yes.
Yeah, okay.
Yes, we
Hauser.
Like him.
And also the name Hauser's
the
awesome.
name's good too, yeah.
Yeah.
And just everything about him in this episode, you can tell he's a good guy. So it's not like he's not a crosshair, right? So you're immediately like, ooh, I like him. Like he's one of the good clones. Yeah.
Right. And you know what? I think so. We can maybe, pause here for a second and speak to Hauser, because Hauser's demeanor and presence and what he does on this episode calls into question a lot about what we know of the clones after Order 66.
Definitely.
Everything we've seen of every clone following the Order 66 was, Commander Cody basically immediately trying to kill Obi-Wan, right? We've seen, every version of clones turning on their Jedi commanders and murdering them without remorse,
of course.
right?
And then,
we've also seen them just follow orders blindly, even when they're kind of not against the Jedi necessarily, right?
Yeah.
And we actually see that in this episode as well with the other kind of like the clones that don't have the painted armor and all that kind of stuff, the kind of less, the regs, as it were.
Yeah.
Right. And, but Hauser stands out because he acts a lot more like the clones we know, the way that they did before Order 66, right?
Yes, definitely. See, and that's what I mean. They gave him painted armor and now he's a good guy. I told you, it's the painted armor.
Well, it certainly helps. It certainly helps have them stand out.
Yeah.
Right.
It's always when they have their own, like, I don't know, painted armor, their own personality to them that they're. But it makes sense to me, though. It makes sense that there would be these clones on these planets that worked just as closely with some of these, locals there that they did with the Jedi. So it's not necessarily that they're gonna turn on the locals either.
Right. And Order 66, I guess the idea here is that Order 66 did not include just any commanders of the army. It was just for the Jedi, which I think we knew already, but this really just
it wasn't every single clone didn't get that message. I guess not.
I'm saying that they probably all did it, but if there was no clone on Ryloth when that order was given, which we don't know for sure. We don't know. I mean, for all we know,
I was just gonna say
Hauser murdered a Jedi. We don't know that.
True. Yeah.
But what we do know is that even if he did or did not, he's still willing to work with Cham, and they clearly have a long history together, right?
For sure,
having worked together for a while. So what does that mean, right? It just means that, like, to me, it means that either the effects of Order 66 either fade over time, and that mind control is not a kind of long-term solution,
right,
or that it means that it's just very selective in, like, it's really just targeted to the Jedi, and that when we're not dealing with a Jedi, they are able to maintain some of their humanity. But those seems like, because of what we've seen from the other clones since Order 66, those two things don't kind of jive, right? Like, in my opinion, like, you've got we've just seen the clones act super coldly regardless. I mean, Crosshair's a great example, right?
Yeah.
Order 66 kicked in, and he's like, no, we need to shoot these innocent bystanders.
Yeah, like immediately, just like, I'm going to do what I'm told, right?
Right, so, right. So, this might suggest, potentially, that Hauser either has a control chip that's malfunctioning, which is probably more likely, just because how differently he's being portrayed here.
Yeah.
Or that there is kind of some greater thinking around kind of what happens on the long term with Order 66, that command. Because if it is the second one, that might, plant some seeds for, the clone rebellion. This has been something that's been rumored for a while, that this is why the clones get phased out, because they actually start, fighting back against the Imperial command.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking too, where it's like, here's another example of a clone who isn't necessarily showing a full 100% loyalty to the Empire, right?
Right, and like, that Admiral Rampart was seeing that.
And I feel like he was kind of testing him at some points too, and seeing how he was going to act, like, throughout this episode, right? So I do feel like the Empire is starting to gauge, like, okay, which one of these clones are going to actually listen to us and which ones are too free thinking, and it's probably going to cause some pretty bad things in the future.
Yeah, we just don't know, but I just say either way, I think just having Hauser here at all opens that kind of that the box of possibilities, and it's really exciting. I really think it's
me too.
it's basically the reason I got excited for this show is exploring these types of scenarios. I think this is I wish, having now seen this episode and just giving overall thoughts, I think this is one of the best episodes of the series. It might be one of the best episodes of Star Wars animation we've ever seen.
Yeah, it's really good.
It tackles the issue the allegory of this kind of this demilitarization, the trust in these imperial figures, and it does it with such nuance that you kind of be like, wow, this is really great stuff. And you kind of wish, I kind of wish at least that we had spent more time. Like this doesn't spend any time with the Bad Batch. Like, they appear as cameo characters basically in this episode in their own series, and I almost wish that this show had been completely reimagined as more similar to the Clone Wars in the sense that it jumps around different planets, and we can explore kind of what is happening on them, or at least if the show's not willing to do that entirely, do more of what this episode did.
I would agree with that. Yeah, like it's nice being able to see these different places that we did see in the Clone Wars and where they are now and what's happening on them, and the different levels of how people are feeling about the Empire, right, and what's going on. So
yeah, because imagine we got an episode that's like all just on Coruscant.
Yeah, that'd be so cool. Although I feel like Coruscant half the time is just like they don't care. Their lives have just stayed the same.
That's true, but there's the ability. I mean, this episode specifically is dealing with political intrigue, and if it's willing to do that here, why can't it do that on Coruscant? Of course, it's now Emperor Palpatine, but declaring yourself Emperor doesn't necessarily mean you get ultimate power right away. Or sorry,
not.
Unlimited power.
Yeah.
And so he's probably in the process of solidifying his political position.
For sure. Well, there would have to be some other senators in that realm that are kind of like, what is happening right now? That I'm sure there are other senators, not just, how Padme was, but other, representatives that were close with the Jedi that are probably thinking like, what is like, we're just letting this happen? Like what?
Yeah, like we basically only know a couple of them, right? Like we know Bail Organa, and and we know what the heck is her name, Mon Mothma,
right?
And
so everyone's just fine with mass murder.
Yeah, but what about everyone else, right? So like, and obviously Omfrey Ta is, but that's not surprising, right?
Well, he's always been a slimy dude.
Yeah, right. Yeah, 100%. Anyway, I just love that the show is willing to completely turn itself on its head and just do something completely different. And sure, it's a lot more like a Clone Wars episode, but that's fine with me. Personally. So I'm in for it. I'm into it.
Me too.
Okay, so back to the episode. So we have we're back in still the first scene. Orn makes a speech. I think they call him Ta for short, so I'm going to call him Ta. Ta makes a speech welcoming the Empire and promising stability and prosperity for Ryloth, but he's not they're not really enjoying him. But he's also what's important here is that he's actually calling for military disbandment, and that they're promising the security from the clone army. Now, this message gets a lot of boos, but unlike what we saw on again last week on that planet, I can't remember what it's called now, where the senator is like, "No, I can't do this. This is wrong."
Mm-hmm.
Right? We have Cham step up and basically say, "No, everyone, calm down. This is what we were fighting for. The clone army earned our trust, and we're willing to continue working with them. So this is the path forward." And they're like, "Okay, well, if Cham says so, we're good to go."
Right.
Which obviously concerns Ta, because, and we've known this for a long time, he feels threatened by Ta.
Oh, for sure.
By Cham.
He would for sure, because it's even he can hear the crowd and they're yelling for Syndulla. They're like, "We want Syndulla. Like, we don't want to hear from you." So they're basically telling their senator, like, "No, we don't care what you think." So
yeah, and
for sure threatened.
Yeah, and the one thing that, again, bringing it back to the real world, speaking of Cuba, this idea of a coup from the military is not a new idea. This is something that happens all the time. So you have a military figure like General Cham, right, who's very popular with the people, right? You need, if you are, the president, or in this case, the senator, the person in charge, you need to be concerned. I mean, especially if you're corrupt, you need to be concerned that you're going to be deposed. Sorry. and potentially disposed. He's also disposed in this episode. So,
is he?
You know,
we'll talk about it.
Yeah,
we'll get there.
Okay, we'll get there. So anyway, like I said, Cham kind of calms the crowd down. We cut to a scene, after having Hera's name dropped. We cut to Hera and Chopper. Is everyone's favorite. Second favorite maybe.
Oh, he's one of my top favorite characters of all time. I love him more than anything with his little hands that come up, and he's always like gesturing with them and like talking with his little robot hands. He's my favorite.
He also has a crazy kill count. I don't know if you guys people are aware of this.
He's like has one of the highest for sure.
He has one of the highest at like 65,000 kills. It's crazy. That includes, by the way, droids, but just saying. So
he's the best.
Yeah, he's great. And I think he was originally voiced by Dave Filoni. I don't remember how that works.
I don't know how you voice a droid.
I think you just make the sounds and then they computerize them.
I guess so. Yeah, which is great.
So he's got his. He seems a little bit more chill though. Do you notice that?
A little bit. I think it's maybe because it's just him and Hera kind of hanging out, and it doesn't have like the boys dynamic of fighting all the time.
Sure.
Because to me, when he's around Zeb and Ezra, I get kind of like a sibling fighting rivalry kind of feel out of them, and like Chopper's kind of just like a shit disturber. So I just feel like he's always like making a little comment and then like puttering away and starting things. So yeah, he's unruly, but I feel like with Hera, he usually listens to Hera.
Yeah, and obviously, like with her parents around, he's probably a little bit more calm too. Yeah. So
they're not quite in the dire straits that they get into in Rebels. So he's a little bit more of a chill robot right now.
So I guess while speaking of Hera and Chopper, I saw a little bit of this conversation going on, and we've actually had this conversation already this season around like how do we feel about the show constantly bringing characters that we know into the show.
This makes sense to me though.
Yeah.
Because we'd already seen like her father in like a commanding role with the military. So to me, it just makes sense. It's not like that much of a reach that this would be going on. So I'm not mad at it at all. Like I honestly I love Hera too. So, and I'm never gonna be mad about seeing Chopper. So
it's really just a win-win-win.
I don't care where you throw him. You could throw him in the most absurd place possible, and I'd be like, "Yep, that's okay."
So okay, fair enough. So that's your exception to the rule is Chopper. But I think generally speaking, hit the nail on the head here because this doesn't feel. I think people can spot a kind of like. Can see the strings when it doesn't feel earned or natural into the story, right? If something feels forced in just for the sake of like product placement or like we're going to be doing a show with Boba Fett, so if we see, I still think we're going to see Boba Fett this season for the record. I'm convinced, but just saying like this doesn't feel like a kind of like a cameo in the same sense that like some of the other ones we've seen that kind of made the world feel smaller. It is technically the same, but because as you mentioned, Cham has played a large part in the Clone Wars before, and sure, Hera's inclusion might be like she does a lot in this episode, more than most kids would probably do on a show like this. But we already have Omega, and so that's not surprising, and we know who Hera is.
Yes.
So we kind of want to. It allows them to kind of fill out Hera's character a little bit more.
For sure. Well, even in, I don't know if you rewatched it at all, but in her Rebels, like in the Rebels episode that her father is in, like she kind of talks about why they're sort of estranged, and it relates back to things that are starting to happen now in this timeline. Right.
He's too trusting of the Empire, and then ultimately his trust is misplaced. So the episode's title is called "The Devil's Deal," the deal that Cham is making. And he's maybe intentionally not seeing the full picture. He's in denial a little bit because the deal he's making with the Empire is peace in exchange for what, right? That's the in exchange for their freedom, essentially, right? And he's always freedom for Ryloth is like his whole thing. That's all he cares about. But he also cares about peace and prosperity for his people. And so he's willing to give the Empire a chance because the clone army earned his trust. And ultimately, this is kind of an extension of what we saw in the Clone Wars, where he's like, despite the fun stuff we did with the clones and how they got along with the Jedi and all that kind of stuff, there's always this kind of underlying sense of doom and gloom. This has that same feel to it, even though it's already after Order 66, and you get the impression he's not familiar with the fact that the Jedi have all been executed and murdered, or at least, again, maybe he does know, but choosing not to kind of look too closely at it,
Yeah, maybe listening to they're traitors and they tried to kill the Chancellor, right? So might be listening to that side of things.
I mean, he doesn't strike me as the one who just like accept the propaganda.
I don't think so either.
But again, we just don't know the details at this point. So I'm not going to assume that he's like cool with the Jedi being executed. But what I'm saying is, regardless, he is, at least right now, at least the beginning of the episode, willing to give the Empire like a shot,
Yeah.
So anyway, Hera and Chopper are watching from a cliff as the Empire sets up a new mining facility. She was asked to do this by her uncle. Just he's not actually her uncle, but Uncle Gobi, who is not kind of giving up the fight quite so easily, right? He's still kind of staying in the fight.
Yeah.
Hera doesn't see anything suspicious, and she kind of takes a moment to look at the clouds and picture herself flying. And she kind of like looks up at the cloud. That's very cute.
I love this scene because I really liked the music, and I don't really notice the music. Usually that's you. Mm-hmm. But I guess I was trying to figure out what music cue it is. I guess it's her theme, but it's very...
It's Hera's theme.
It's Hera's theme, but it's very similar to kind of Leia's a little bit.
Yes.
And
yeah. Mm-hmm.
It's very similar, but I just really liked how soft and cute it was when she was looking at the, at the birds and she's motioning with her hand, and then it just kind of slowly gets kind of sinister as the clones walk up. I just thought it was really well done.
Yeah, it is great. And I was going to call out the music there. So it is Hera's theme, which Hera's theme has always had a tinge of the Leia theme. So it's really lovely, and it actually comes back a couple times here. It's an example of her innocence, and then exactly you're showing like as it kind of turns sinister as the clones walk up. That's an example of how her innocence is going to be kind of lost.
Definitely, yeah.
So we go back, and we're back with Cham, and as he is overseeing this demilitarization of the Twi'lek, I guess it's at their house. I mean, it's not clear to me where exactly this place is, but they're in this kind of like courtyard area. And his wife and Gobi are having a discussion on that balcony about kind of what's going on. And Gobi doesn't agree with Cham's decision, but Eleni kind of preaches patience a little bit at first, and argues that her husband is trying to just tired of having to have all the people fighting all the time, and he wants to see peace, right?
Right. Yeah.
But Gobi doesn't. He doesn't like feeling defenseless, and he feels like by giving back their weapons, they leave themselves defenseless, and actually tells her that he's going to be getting more weapons.
Right, yeah.
So they're interrupted when Hauser and a few clones escort Hera into the yard. Hauser takes... This is where I think, he really kind of wins people over, because he takes a balanced or measured approach, despite, things that he describes them as being tense, right?
Right.
But he promises not to report Hera for entering a restricted zone, but Cham, has to promise that it won't happen again.
Right, yeah.
Right? And so the impression you get is like he's in charge, and he's willing to tell them that his clones not to kind of arrest Hera, right?
Right, yeah.
But again,
not
this idea
tell
that
the Empire that they found her there.
Right, but you get this idea again that like, maybe a couple of weeks ago, more closer to Order 66, that, this idea of like not reporting something would be completely crazy.
Oh, for sure.
So I thought this was a really interesting piece.
Yeah, I really liked it. I kind of got that feeling of like he's very close to this family, and he actually cares about Hera, and he sees her as this like child, and because he's probably been around this family for a while at least. So he's kind of, taking her to her dad, being like, hey, yeah, like rein her in a little bit. Like, I don't want to have to do this again. Right.
Right.
Like, you can see that softness in him, that he doesn't want them to get in trouble. He's trying to protect them.
Right. I think there is a vibe. You get this kind of like Anakin, Rex, and Ahsoka vibe.
Definitely.
A little bit. But again, just this, I think they're yes, their voices are all the same, right? They're all voiced by Dean Bradley Baker.
Yeah.
But he is using a very similar tone and tenor that he uses with Rex.
Yes, very much.
And so there's this kind of this this humanity behind the authority. Is this a nice balance, because you got clones that are all authority, and you have the kind of the more, you got like what the heck is the that one that abandoned the army? What's his name again?
Oh, Cut.
Cut.
Yeah.
Yeah. He's obviously more of that like pure, like very soft, and he doesn't really have that same military kind of feel to him. So, but again, Hauser kind of balancing that, again, very similar to what Rex does.
Definitely, yeah.
So Hera and her mom then have a quick chat as well. Cham was quick to kind of like give her a little bit of a talking to, right? But she does ultimately kind of point the finger at Gobi. She kind of rats him out a little bit.
Yeah.
And Hera and her mom have a quick chat, and at first she's also takes a similar tone, like, hey, bad, shame. But ultimately she kind of comes around and is like, tell me everything you saw.
Yeah, but what'd you see? Yeah.
And so, I don't remember how much Eleni played a part in the previous Clone Wars stuff. I haven't rewatched that. But I really like her here because she's doing, like, she's really so much better at this leadership job than her husband is.
Oh, yeah.
Or Prita is, because she's like, at the very beginning, she's like, what is she, I think Orm asked her, what do you think of this? And she's like, I will do anything that helps support the Ryloth, people of Ryloth.
Yeah. Just very diplomatic, but right. Underneath it, she's not scheming, but she's got other things.
She's smarter than the average bear.
I think so, yes.
She's willing to maybe see the things that Cham is choosing not to.
Yes.
We said mentioned before. So she wants to be prepared. So she's asking her what's going on. So like I mentioned, there's a lot to unpack here, but like this idea that there's this conversation between Gobi and Cham, and she's like, you brought my daughter into this. He's of course upset that he would loop his daughter.
Oh, of course. That's so irresponsible.
Totally.
Why are you getting a child to do your spying for you? Like, especially the kid of, because I guess he's the general, right. Sadula?
Yes.
Like, what's wrong with you? Like, that's obviously during tense times. Like, it's tense. Why would you involve her in any of this?
I think Gobi's probably thinking, if I can get his daughter involved, I might be able to pull him back in.
And maybe there is more stuff that the mom, is kind of like, oh yeah, like, maybe Gobi and the mom are kind of chatting and she's okay with it, right? Like, not necessarily that she knows, but she's like, if Hera's interested and she wants to,
she's not going to say no.
Explore her own opinions on things and go with you, then that's okay. But
right,
are we doing spoilers if it involves stuff that comes from Rebels?
Yeah, everything.
Is that okay?
Everything that's happened. I mean, I think so. I mean, maybe if you want to, yeah, spoilers for Rebels. Skip forward.
Yeah, skip forward a minute. Okay, so the story is that Hera tells Ezra is that her mom ends up dying in this kind of rebellion phase,
right?
And then her dad goes full scale, like, I only care about Ryloth and liberating Ryloth, and then Hera bails. Because she just can't deal with him because he doesn't care about family anymore. He only cares about Ryloth and he doesn't care about anything else. Right. So then Hera takes off to do what she does, and it's helping other places and other people and not just, Ryloth. So this is kind of like, this timeline is right where like the strain starts to happen in this family. So I don't know when that will happen, but
sure,
that is like a tragedy that happens within their family, right? So
yeah, and I'm not to say like that I kind of remembered that or necessarily knew or know that was going to happen, but you get the sense that her clock is ticking.
Yes,
I think just in the way that she composes herself and carries herself here, and then how she gets looped in with everything that Cham does. So, anyway, the stuff between Gobi and Cham is interesting, and I think Cham's kind of initial stance is right. Don't loop my daughter in, but he's also talking about this idea that like, hey, what's the point of fighting if we can't accept peace, right?
Well, yeah, they just did this entire war, right?
Yeah,
so he's just thinking like, hey, can we just take a break and wait and see what's going to happen before we get a full scale like uprising again?
Right.
But because doesn't Gobi say something like they were supposed to leave and now they keep coming back in droves, right?
So he's like, exactly. The clones were supposed to leave when the war was over, is what he says, and that should be ominous.
Right? Oh, for sure. He's like, now more and more are showing up each day. It's like, ooh, yeah, like that's
Yeah.
that doesn't look good. It looks like an occupation is happening. So
exactly. And then off that exact note, we cut to Ormfrey Taw's office, and the sinister music plays. Like, it's just so
the bad guy music.
Evil. Yeah. As and Rampart is there, and Crosshair is there, and they're discussing Cham with him, with Ormfrey Taw. Rampart is surprised actually how helpful Cham has been, but Crosshair's like, hey, let's not look at Cham. It's Gobi and his kind of partisans that are the real threat, and that's Crosshair's kind of his note here. But Ormfrey Taw, again, like was mentioned, he feels threatened, and he's like saying it doesn't matter. He's just the lieutenant. He'll just do whatever Cham says, and we need to take out. I think he says they need to be all dealt with.
Yeah.
So pretty evil stuff, and there's this line from Rampart, and I don't like the character necessarily as a person, but as a character, Rampart's very cool because he's very capable, and a capable Imperial is always a very compelling villain, I think.
Oh, for sure. It's very kind of, I mean, he's not quite there, but like Thrawn-esque, right? Yes. Where he's very intelligent, and he's going to do things maybe slightly differently than the average, lieutenant or whatever it is, admiral is, that might just immediately like pull these people in and execute them. Like, he's going to kind of wait and see what he can do.
Right. He's playing a longer game.
Yeah, exactly. Like he's playing chess, right? So.
Yeah, and he's like, we each have our parts to play, Senator, but be sure to see this through.
Yeah.
Right? So there's this idea that there's a plan in motion, right? There's also this. We also get to see Crosshair's face for the first time after his face was burnt off. And I was wrong. There wasn't any reconstructive surgery. He just has like a really gross back of his head is kind of like all scarred up.
Yeah, he's got a gross scar. I was hoping for a robot eye, but no.
Me too. That would have been cool.
At least I thought it'd be cool if he lost an eye.
Well, he wouldn't even be a very good sharpshooter anymore if that was
true. Well, I was going to say you only need one eye, but don't you just use one eye for that? You only look at one eye down the scope anyway.
True.
So
that's true. One. But also, we don't know. They might have like, if they can replace a hand,
I'm sure they replace an eyeball. Yeah.
I'm sure eyeballs can be replaced.
Definitely. Sure, we've seen it already.
Yeah. So we cut back to Cham and Hera. And Cham is walking out to the balcony as Hera is daydreaming again, and he mentions like, "Do you still dream of flying?" And her response is, "All the time." And it's quite nice. But then this is also like a needs to be unpacked here. This is a great scene because they discuss how her dream is flying, right, and his dream was a free Ryloth, and Hera reminds him that Uncle Gobi doesn't agree with what's going on, he thinks that things are getting worse, and asks why Cham doesn't trust her to fight along with him, especially if that's how, if that's what he was like when, she's like, you remind me of me at your age, right?
Yeah.
She's like, well, then why don't you trust me to fight, right? And Cham's really response is like, he wants a better life for her, that he doesn't want her in fighting for the rest of her life, because he says it takes a toll. So this really hits home because you know that she does end up fighting the rest of her life, and that it does in fact take a toll, and we know exactly what that toll is.
I know, so it hit me right in the heart. I was like, oh my god, yeah, it was such a good line. Like, it's good old Star Wars getting you right in the tears.
Yeah, this didn't make me tear up for some reason. I don't know.
Maybe it didn't make me tear up, but I was just, when you think about it all, you're like, oh man, like he doesn't want that for her, and that's all that happens. It's just basically the rest of her life is war kind of thing.
It's tragedy. I mean, this is kind of like the precursor, the prelude to what is ultimately a tragedy. Her life, although filled with, ultimately, she has a child, but she ultimately loses, her love of her life and all this kind of stuff. It's really sad, right? And it's everything that her father doesn't want for her, but isn't ultimately what happens. And like this idea of destiny.
Yeah, and he's trying to protect her from it now, but it's like, if he only knew, like, it's like, well, you may as well get her started now, young, and
right. Like,
it doesn't matter.
If he knew what was being plotted, he probably would have.
He
probably would have sent her off. I mean, honestly, if he knew what was being plotted, he probably would have sent her off the world. Like,
probably.
He would have not even no, we're not even going to deal with this. Like, it's up to him, and not him and his daughter and his wife to deal with it. So that I think the line is, "My hope is you'll never have to live a life like mine." And sorry, Cham. And what's even worse is that Cham sees it later. He gets to see what happened. But because at that point he's so broken and jaded, he's not really able to kind of to see her in the same way he sees her now. You know. So anyway, that's a lovely scene. And so we cut back to the refinery, and Rampart is giving Cham and Eleni a tour of the refinery. He's promising that the Dunium mine will help rebuild the parts of the galaxy affected by the war. By the way, Dunium is the material that they use to make Star Destroyers.
Right,
so, yeah. And he's basically saying, help rebuild the galaxy, really, just put it under a heel, is really what they're saying here. And
you mean the Death Star?
Yeah. And Eleni looks around, and she sees soldiers, and she sees anti-aircraft turrets, and she asks, I think this is a very pointed question. She's like, despite being promised that the facility was not going to be a military installation, it has all these weapons and soldiers. What's the deal with that? And before, Rampart does give an answer, right? He's basically saying, like, and very political, that under the Republic, Ryloth was vulnerable, right? Which we know because they felt abandoned by the Republic, and that the Empire wants to protect, quote, the interests of Ryloth. But note how, the important being part, the way that they phrase it here is the interests of Ryloth, not Ryloth, not the people of Ryloth.
Yeah.
The material that
the mine. Yeah. Well, because eventually they basically they're gutting the planet, and they're selling the people for slaves. Like, it's awful.
That's right.
Yeah.
It gets very, very bad. So they're interrupted by one of Rampart's elite soldiers bringing him a data pad. I'm not sure if it's Crosshair. It's not. I don't think it is. Bringing him a data pad and leaving Cham and Eleni alone to have a brief discussion. Eleni is concerned that Cham is being too trusting. We kind of discussed this already. And Cham urges patience, but Eleni asks, I think another very important question. She's really kind of cutting to the core of things. What if the Empire's version of peace is not one we can accept? Then what?
Yes.
Right? And yeah, this comes back to the title of the show, the episode, this Devil's Deal, that basically Cham makes a deal with the Empire that says, hey, we don't have to fight anymore. You can, as long as you protect the planet, we will demilitarize, and we'll kind of stand down. And he's not really, and he's willing to, he's basically gambling the fate of the planet by doing this.
Oh,
right?
For sure.
And that he's not really considering, he's not really hedging his bet. And that's where Gobi comes in. He's trying to hedge this decision. We're not going to give up all of our weapons. We're gonna hoard some because we don't want to be defenseless. And Cham is saying if we do that, then we're not giving our full effort into this agreement we've made with the Empire. So we can't do that, and we have to trust that it's going to work out. But so she says, then what? And we cut back to Gobi and Hera, and there's this very ominous note and tone of music, and we cut there, and I can't tell what time of day. I guess they're in a ravine or a gully or whatever, so it's like, I think it's sunset-ish time, but dusk, if you will. And but it looks like nighttime because I guess they're in a shadow.
Yeah, it looks like sunset or whatever. Yeah.
So Hera arrives to tell him that she can't go with him. I mean, they're off to, he's preparing some ship, and Hera can't come because her dad doesn't want her to anymore. And Gobi argues that, no, you're not. This is very funny, by the way. You're not breaking the rules because it's not spying. It's just a simple supply run.
Yeah, it's a supply run. This whole scene upsets me because he knows exactly what he's doing. And you're taking a child with you on a weapons run.
Gun smuggling.
Like, maybe let her sit this one out. Go back to the spying. Spying is fine. Maybe not weapons running.
Right.
That's
and
insane.
Also
arms dealing.
Right. And also, she's also be like, you know what? No, I should probably stick behind. And then he totally manipulates her by saying, oh, well, maybe I'll let you fly this time.
Yeah. It's like, oh, well, that's too bad. I was going to let you fly this time. Like, you manipulative SOB. That's
right. This is just, I think, like I said, this episode's really great because of the relationships and dynamics between these characters are so complex and interesting and well explored. So,
I like how she tells Chopper to cover for her.
I was like, what does that mean? What does that even mean?
And he's just like, wah, wah, wah. Just waves at her.
Okay, I guess so. So, see you later. Meanwhile, Crosshair, I love this, by the way, that he's kind of been watching the whole time. And he looks on from, and probably, by the way, that data pad that Rampart's getting is probably a transmission or a report from Crosshair.
Oh,
that,
I'm sure it is.
He's packing
saying,
up this
I'm
ship.
following them and doing this. Yeah.
Right. So he hits the ship with a tracker as it takes off, and then we see Gobi and Hera fly out to one of the moons of Ryloth. And by the way, this moon looks completely like desolate and like there should be no atmosphere, but they just walk off the. I was like, this seems so funny.
That. I thought that was funny too. I'm like, are they just in space and it's just cool? Okay.
Yeah,
because they look like they're on like an asteroid, but it's
it looks like they're on our moon. You can't just walk around our moon without a spacesuit on.
It's Star Wars. I guess there's an atmosphere on that moon.
I guess. Yeah.
Close
it's
enough.
Fine. Yeah, it's fine. So I would have liked just the breathers would have been enough, I think. But so they're landing. She's said that they're not allowed. She's not allowed to do takeoffs and landings yet, which is fair.
Yeah.
And so Gobi says they're there to pick up weapons, and then we see. I'm like, I completely forgot about the Bad Batch by this point, but we see the Marauder.
I assumed it was going to be the Bad Batch, but yeah.
Right. And we see the Marauder. I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, that makes sense. That's a fun way to kind of keep them involved.
Right.
So they start to land, and Hera is just impressed with the ship. I've never seen a ship like that before.
Mm-hmm.
So Hunter and them, they all disembark, and Hunter reveals that Sid had sent them along with the blasters and some thermal detonators. Meanwhile, Hera, she approaches the Marauder kind of unprovoked and kind of asks Omega, who's sitting on the ship, if she can come aboard. By the way, I like this, like, Hunter, can she come aboard?
Like asking your dad.
Yeah, and also like he doesn't even respond. He just kind of gives like a half nod.
Gives her a nod. Yeah.
And then I like how Hera's like, yeah, you can come on, but no funny business.
Yeah.
She's like, funny and Hera's business. Like, what does that even mean? That's funny.
It was very cute.
Yeah. So Omega gives her a tour of the cockpit, and she's like pointing out where all the controls are, and they have a little chat, and it's basically this really cute moment between these two kids, and how she's saying like, well, when I grow up, I want to be a pilot, because she thinks that like, oh, are you a pilot? And by the way, Omega's like, no, tech won't let me unless I memorize all the ship specifications.
Memorize all the ship specifications, like from memory kind of thing. Yeah. Like, it's insane.
It's so funny. But it's one of those things where like, yeah, when you're older, basically. And the Hera's like, specification, that's only half of it. Right? It's about flying is about a feeling, right? Mm-hmm. And I just love how she describes the whole, like, she's like, you plot the course, the computer ultimately helps you, but it's not, it's you flying.
Right, yeah. Because it's like two completely different views on what flying 100%, is. Like, it's the technical and then the emotional. Yeah.
So they go back, and then she's like, oh, well, let me show you other parts of the ship. And they go back. She shows her room, and she like, gets very proud.
Yeah.
But Hera gets a little jealous. She's like, oh, my God, you get to live on a starship. How awesome is that? Right? She doesn't really know that she's constantly, being hunted by the same people.
I loved it, too. Yeah. Omega's just like, when we're not being shot at, this is my bedroom.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it's just the gunner room.
Yeah, right. Fair enough. And Hera's like, she's like, what do you mean shot at? Like, who's chasing you? And she's like, well, what do you mean us? Like, I thought you guys were the ones who were in trouble.
Yeah.
Right?
She's like, are you in some kind of trouble? Like, just genuinely concerned about her just met.
Right.
Yeah. And they're both just, kind of concerned about each other. It's very, very sweet.
Yes. It is very sweet. And again, there's a lot of innocence there, which is kind of cute to see in Star Wars. So Hunter gives Gobi kind of this final bit of warning before they leave, and basically says like, building an arsenal attracts attention, and Gobi's response is that we don't have a choice, right? So I don't know if we know what happens to Gobi, but I feel like I could see him easily working with Saw Gerrera and his team.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Again, as you mentioned, Cham and his whole crew are all about protecting Ryloth, and Saw's kind of sees a bigger picture, so not necessarily they would work together, but they take a similar tact to this whole thing.
Right.
And so as Gobi flies off, Hunter asks about Hera, like, oh, you made a new friend, and there's this kind of funny exchange, and she's like, she's strange, I like her.
Yeah.
And did you know that flying is about a feeling?
Oh yeah.
And then Tech, by the way, just with the great, what feeling?
Yeah.
Like, so good.
Feeling.
Like, yeah. I love that. So even though, I mean, like I said, I said off the top that I would love this show if it did more stuff like this week's episode. That being said, of course, I do like the main characters.
Oh, for sure.
So
I still love how Tech is pretty much a droid. Like he just he's very like systematic and like you need to learn the manual on how to do how the ship works before you can even touch the flying mechanism.
To be fair, when learning to fly, that is actually how you're supposed to do it.
Fair.
Learn how the ship works, so that when something goes wrong, you know what to do.
Does Tech even fly the ship?
Yeah, him and Echo, I feel like fly.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah,
fine.
They're kind of like the Han and Chewie combo.
Yeah.
So, on back on Ryloth, as they return to the planet, oh my God, the shot of this cloud as they come back into atmosphere is just so gorgeous. Like I would put that on a painting. I would put that on a wall. Like it looks like it was painted. We know that they do these kind of cityscapes and skyscapes, and they're ultimately just paintings.
Right.
But they're gorgeous. Like there's just like like the way it's lit is just next level. They've been really fond of their kind of sunset, dusk, and dawn lighting. We've seen it a lot this season.
They're real good at it for sure.
But it's so good. It's so good. And so like I can't tell if it's first thing in the morning or late at night. But they are coming back onto the planet, and they get a warning that an Imperial ship is approaching. At that moment, Crosshair, with this amazing shot, takes out one of the engines, and they crash into a ravine where it's very dark. And again, almost like they are able to leverage this amazing lighting, and also it's nighttime. It's like you can kind of have the best of both worlds. So we see some clones land in one of their old Republic transports. And by the way, what I love about this episode, another thing that I love, is that we see not only Hauser in kind of his more Clone Wars style kind of painted armor, right? But we also see a lot of the Clone Wars vehicles. We see the Juggernaut tanks. We see the troop transports, right? Because we've seen a lot of the new Imperial stuff, very recently, and by the way, we also see the Republic era speeder bikes.
Yeah, I was gonna say the speeders too. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So it's really cool. So I'm like, and it's like, so there's this kind of, and you get the sense that that we know that Ryloth is like so far flung. It's like one of the furthest planets in the Outer Rim. That like maybe that's why they haven't got the new stuff yet. But either way, just it really helps bridge that gap between what we know of the Empire and kind of the Clone Wars that we saw. Just
that would make sense actually.
So we see them landing in this transport, and also a Juggernaut tank approaching from down the ravine. By the way, the Juggernaut looks so good.
It does look really good.
It looks so good. The way that like the suspension is moving and like its headlights, and it's just really cool.
Because that's the big tank one, right?
Yeah, it's the one with the big wheels. We just don't ever see wheels very often.
I know. It is funny when you get to actually see wheels in Star Wars, because it's so often like speeders or hover things or walkers. It's never like an actual tank.
Yeah, and like so this, the Juggernaut's always been cool. We actually see the Juggernaut in Solo, not Solo, sorry, in
Mandalorian, right?
Well, I think we've seen it a bunch of times. I think we've seen it in The Mandalorian. We saw a version of it in The Mando, but we also see it in Rogue One. That's where it's actually the whole thing starts basically with her being arrested and sitting on one of those when she gets rescued.
Right, yeah.
Anyway, so that we've seen them in live action, and it actually looks almost as good as what it looks like in live action. So it's really cool. So Crosshair informs basically everyone's under arrest, right? And Crosshair informs Rampart that they caught them smuggling weapons, right? Ormfrey Ta is there, and he jumps to conclusions, and it's hard to tell how much of this has like been pre-planned, but obviously some of it has. And he's basically saying that because Hera's there, it must mean that Cham is plotting an uprising, and that this is proof, and this is what they need. But Rampart is not as quick to jump to conclusions, right? And not as quick to blame Cham. He's basically saying like, no, just because his daughter's involved doesn't not necessarily implicate him, and we know that he's popular, so that's not going to be enough.
Yeah, basically like that's not how the people are going to see it. Even if we try and spin it that way, like it's not going to go over that well with the crowds, right?
So ever the politicians. So Cham is willing to hold Hera responsible for her actions. Basically, she's going to be arrested and charged despite her just being a kid. And by the way, you love when Hauser chimes in. She's just a child, right?
Yeah.
And like no one's listening. Orm
No, of course not.
Suggests that they're insurgents, and that they need to be taken away. And by the way, all the other lower ranked clones immediately follow Orm Free Taa's orders.
They do, yeah.
Yeah. But I love it. Again, it's just the way that they're able to do this, even with the helmets on. It's just so subtle, like how he just kind of like looks and is like,
I know. Even how he just like the other two clones like start stepping forward and he just doesn't move. It's just very subtle, but like you can see that like hesitance and that he's not for this and he doesn't like what's happening.
Totally. And so he ultimately does kind of arrest them, right? And so he guides them away. But he does seem to have reservations, and Crosshair tells Rampart that he sees some of Gobi's fighters watching them. But again, smart guy tells them that let them report back.
Right. Yeah.
Which is smart. So we cut to Cham and Eleni, and they receive the report from Gobi's fighters and decide to contact. The first thing they're going to do is that we need to talk to Orm Free Taa right away, right? But Chopper rushes in and informs them. This is kind of a little bit clunky, but Chopper rushes in and they're like, "What did you find out?" And they're like. They do the thing where they do the, what do you mean? Guilty of treason?
Yeah. Because he just goes like, womp, womp,
right. Womp, womp, womp. Yeah, exactly. So
it's the best thing about Chopper. You can just make noises and then have him say whatever you want.
What's that, Lassie? The kids are stuck in the well? Like, that's basically what's happening here, but it's fine. And that they've been found guilty of treason despite not having had a trial. So, and Cham is like, if it's up to Taa, they won't even have one. So we got to take action. We need to intercept the convoy before it gets back to town or whatever. So really cool. Things start like this is where things like the pace really starts to pick up and things get really exciting. So we're back at the convoy and Hera is in the Juggernaut as Cham watches from above. They're riding blurgs, which is fun because
I loved that we got to see blurgs.
Yeah, I mean, obviously we've seen them before in the Clone Wars Ryloth episodes, but they've been popularized since The Mandalorian. So
yeah, I just love how much they don't make sense, like with their tiny little front arms that can't reach their mouths or the ground. I'm like, I don't know what those are for, but I adore them.
Right. Well, T-Rex arms don't make sense.
Yeah.
So
I know they do have little baby T-Rex arms. I really enjoy it. Like, why do they need those? I like that they're
there. Like, how do you even ride? Like, this idea that you could ride them, but like they're not 4-legged, so it's like you're basically just they're basically just piggybacking you the whole time.
Well, that's like aren't Tauntauns 2 legs?
Tauntauns are 2-legged too. That's true.
Lots of 2-legged.
But they have more of like,
they're
the Tauntauns I feel like have more of like have more of like a forward lean to them.
Yeah,
they kind of look more like a kangaroo.
I
don't think you could ride a kangaroo either, for the record.
No, so. I don't think you could.
Yeah. So anyway, they're riding blurgs and using I like this, by the way, that just showing again how capable these kind of insurgent fighters are, because they're using these flashlights to like send them like to like send nonverbal communication. They're like flashing lights at each other using like Morse code. It's very cool. And Cham hijacks a speeder. This is really badass. I think it's another example of like, okay, well, we need to see exactly how badass Cham is or remind people. So he's going to spear a clone off of a while jumping off of a speeder. And then also use that same spear to spear another clone also on a speeder. So it's pretty cool, is what I'm saying.
Yeah,
pretty badass.
He's tough for sure.
Mm-hmm.
There's a reason why he's the general, I think. So
yeah. So back inside the Juggernaut, Orm Free Taa demands that they, attack. It must be a Cham attack, right? Hauser, again, looking, reluctantly. He's like, all right, fine. Right?
Yeah.
Meanwhile, Cham's forces are basically like cutting through them, right? So
yeah, they're just stunning them left, right, and center.
They are, and by the way, not always stunning. Some are using the stun setting, others aren't.
Oh, I thought they were all stunning.
No, there's the one that gets shot off of their blurg is not using the stun setting.
Fair enough.
Yeah. So and by the way, this episode, which I thought this show was really kind of, we were talking about this, I think, as early as last week, where it's like, really, our heroes are just always using the stun setting. It's like,
yeah, like when does it change?
When does that change? And like this episode's willing to do go pretty far with the blaster bolts.
Yeah,
I think so. Anyway, we see a Twi'lek get murdered by a clone, and because this is a setup, I don't really give them full credit here. Like they're being capable, but they're being set up. So and obviously I think Hauser's not in on the plan, obviously.
No, definitely not.
So they put up a kind of a small resistance, but ultimately they do take control of the tank and they cut the comms, right? And Cham successfully takes control of the tank. Ta is desperate for reinforcements, but Rampart tells Hauser to stand down and tell them that they are going to surrender, right? Just keeping us alive, Senator.
Right. He's so calm too.
Yeah,
like and you just know, I'm like, he's gonna do something awful. Like you just know. I'm like,
but you don't know what yet.
No,
like, that's the thing. It's so cool.
But you just know that he's just standing there too calm. He's like, oh yeah, no, it's fine. Just stand down. It's all good.
Mm-hmm. Yep. No, we'll surrender. Yep.
Hate them.
Cham and they're doing their job then. Cham and Eleni bust in. I love this, by the way. And she jumps up and she runs right to her mom. It's very cute.
Yeah.
And she's put on a speeder, and the speeder's being driven by Chopper. So
yeah.
Cham is incensed. Obviously, he's really pissed off. He holds a blaster to Ormfrey Ta and threatens him. Basically, say, "How dare you, accuse my daughter of treason? I've stand by and we've watched you kind of get fat off of the backs of Ryloth, and if anybody should be held accountable for treason, it's you." Right?
Oh, for sure. Like he just knows how corrupt he is at this point too. Like I'm sure he's seen so many different shady things.
Right. I mean, to be honest, one of the things that Ta should have done is probably remove, Cham should have done is remove Ormfrey Ta like way earlier.
Oh, so probably, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But whatever, he plays by the rules. So he looks like he's going to execute him. He's holding a blaster to him, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I love again Hauser being this voice of reason. Think about what you're doing. Let's not be hasty. Right.
Yeah.
And then even his wife steps in and kind of talks him down. Right. Don't worry. He's going to get his time will come.
Yeah.
Right?
Like he's going to get his.
Right. But don't, but that this isn't the way.
Right. Yeah.
And as soon as he steps back and steps down, Rampart gives this like nod, and we see that Crosshair's up on the ridge and takes a single blaster bolt to the head of Ormfrey Ta. So you think that he's not dead?
Here's my thing about this. So he's a big Twi'lek. He got
shot in the head, though.
He has massive Lekus. They're huge. I think he got shot in the Leku because I think if Crosshair wanted to shoot him in the head, he could have done it much better on point.
He does shoot him in the head. It hits him in like the temple. He's dead. He's dead.
The side of his Leku. I don't know.
He's 100%
but then why
dead.
Does he say? Why did they arrest them for the attempted assassination?
Maybe he's also going by the rules. He technically didn't assassinate him, but it looked like their rescue attempt looks like an assassination.
But then why wouldn't he just said you're arrested for the assassination? Because he's not going to charge Crosshair with murder.
He might still say that. We don't know.
I don't know.
But they also carry him away on a cart and not a stretcher. So I'm just saying.
People were saying they saw his arm or his hand move. I didn't see that.
Listen, if he's alive, I'll be shocked.
I think he just got shot in the big fat Leku, so that's what I'm saying.
Okay, maybe. But it's like, I guess you're right that the wording of the attempted assassination is interesting, but I just don't.
Cad Bane got shot in the head and is still alive.
Yeah, but he had like a
metal plate.
Yeah, or whatever.
He had a hat on, so it's fine.
I don't know. I'm just saying, like I saw him get shot in the head, and he instantly collapses, and you see the blaster bolt on his head, and it's like I don't think there's much. You can't really survive that, in my opinion. But
maybe he's just got it. Like I said,
we shall see.
It's his big fat Leku.
I think we're gonna see him being buried next episode, but we'll see. Rampart tells Hauser to find Hera. She hasn't gotten far. Take your soldiers, go find her. And I like how he hands him the weapon too.
Yeah, right? Just gives him a gun. Like, okay.
Yeah, he looks conflicted. And I love this gorgeous shot. So he's standing there as one of the transports takes off. Two of the transports takes off, and he's kind of standing in the light of one of the headlights of one of the other ones, and he just kind of looks dejected.
Yeah.
And then we cut to this angled up shot from inside this ravine, and we see the three transports like shooting out over the horizon, and it's like really cool looking shot of this like orangey sky, and then it tilts down, and we see Hera on the speeder with Chopper by herself. She no longer has her parents with her, and we leave the episode there. So I don't think we're done with Ryloth.
I hope not. I hope this is like a 2-episode arc at least where, I don't know. Yeah. Is she going to run, or is this the last time? I feel like, I don't know. I'm not too sure. I feel like her dad still have to like have some sort of row at some point. I don't know. But I think she's too young to fully go straight Hera and take off with Chopper by herself.
Yeah, probably. But it's like, but who then takes her under? Like, we don't know.
That's the thing. Like, where does she learn how to fly? All that, because I don't know. Maybe, maybe what's his name?
I think maybe they get a she. Okay, let's put it this. Let me put it this way. We mentioned how like I liked how the Bad Batch were just kind of cameos here. And like it's fun to see these characters again. But if Hera ends up like growing up with the Bad Batch,
I think that'd be insane.
It's a step too far.
That's too far.
Just put it that way.
No, I was thinking maybe Hauser finds her and helps hide her. Like, I don't think he's gonna. If he finds her, I don't think he's going to.
I agree.
Turn her in. I think he's got too much kind of like respect and love for that family. I can see him, and then maybe he gets in trouble.
He
for
probably gets killed. Hauser's probably has his time's probably coming.
I like him.
Yeah, me too. It's unfortunate. Okay, well that's the episode. Final thoughts on this week.
I really like this one. I loved seeing young Hera and obviously Chopper. I thought it was really really pretty. Even the kind of opening shot of all the Twi'leks crowd and like all the different colors of like their and the different like the textures of their like lekus and the designs and everything and their clothing. I just thought it looked really, really cool. I feel like we haven't seen, I don't know, big crowds of Twi'leks in a long time. So I like being able to see all the different looks and feels of them.
Well, when we were in the Clone Wars stuff, they didn't really have the ability to do a lot of characters on screen at the same time. So
that's what I mean. I'm impressed by it. I'm like, wow, that's a lot of detail in this big crowd of people, like different outfits and costumes and costumes, but you know what I mean.
We didn't even mention that the way the kind of the design on Eleni's Leku is like represented. You remember how Hera has that like toy thing?
Oh no, it's not a toy. It's a I can't remember.
It's a family heirloom of some kind. Yeah. I don't remember. But anyway, it's so that like those are similar too. So I thought that was cool. And but I didn't notice that myself. I saw that someone else noticed that.
Yeah, I saw that. It's like the tattoo on his Leku, right? It's the same symbol that's on her. I can't remember what it's called. It's like a talisman or something.
Yeah,
like
it's I don't know.
It's basically like the Twi'lek family history. Like each parent adds something to it.
Yeah, they have these, and they have like their own little like wooden pieces.
Yeah, that represent themselves. Cool. Yeah, it's kind of like a family history. Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, any other thoughts on the episode as a whole?
Yeah, honestly, I didn't even mind that the Bad Batch weren't in it. Like, not that it was a good thing or a bad thing. I kind of liked this different episode that kind of went
refreshing.
Off. Yeah, it was nice. Like it wasn't just the same thing. Like it would have been boring if this was just like focusing on the Bad Batch and their supply run. It's, you know what I mean? Like I didn't want to see another one of those. So I'm glad that they did it this way from like a different point of view. I just thought it was really interesting. So I'm really excited for next week. I really hope they don't just leave it at that. I hope we pick up where this one left off for next week. So
yeah, I think we will. If I on IMDb, the name for the next episode is, but I feel like I rarely get to see the name for the next episode. But the name for the next episode is apparently Rescue on Ryloth.
Oh, okay, sweet. So it makes sense. We're going to be back there.
Yeah, and I don't think you can just leave it at this. There's so many unanswered questions anyway.
No. So, did her uncle?
Yeah, he got arrested there too.
Did he get arrested? Okay, I was like, did he get arrested? Because then maybe he can, we'll get to see the Bad Batch again.
But there's still other fighters out there. Like we know that.
That's true.
Yeah,
she might still be able to get. I mean, I don't know if she would contact Bad Batch, but we'll see. But no,
yeah, I mean, that's where they get their weapons. So I think that's probably where they'll probably be sent on a rescue mission, maybe either to protect Hera or to like they did with the senator last week to kind of rescue Cham,
them, and get them off world maybe. So I guess we'll see. But overall, I really like this episode. I thought it was super well done. So
same, and my kind of overall thoughts are echo yours generally. This is, like I said, a very refreshing episode. Something that it gets a little bit more complex. It's a little bit deeper, right? We're dealing with a complex issue, and I think that they handle it with with a really deft hand. And as you mentioned, every episode seems to one up the last for how good it looks. The lighting in this episode is amazing, and the detail they're able to bring to these characters is just so, as you compare it with what's on behind me, is just so so different, and it's so great. And like, so everything about this episode is amazing. I don't really need to retread too much of what we mentioned off throughout this whole episode. I can't wait to see what happens next. If this is just the kind of the beginning of the third arc of the season, which I think it is, we're going to be getting some really interesting stuff, it sounds like, and I can't wait. I can't wait. Great episode. Maybe my favorite of the season so far. Hard to say. It'll be, when we get to the end, we have to pick a favorite. I'm not sure if I'll be able to, but this is certainly up there. It's just very smart. This episode is brilliantly written. Like I said, it kind of weaves these kind of character dynamics so well. Some of these classical tropes about parents and war and what do you do when you kind of when you quote unquote win the war, what do you have to give up for peace? Like there's all these questions that this show is asking, and it's willing to dive into these kind of more complex issues in a way that I didn't give the show credit for, before, to be honest. Mm-hmm. And with the introduction of Hauser, I think that really opens up a whole other box of questions that I can't wait to explore, and we maybe only get to see the outcome next week. But either way, everything here is basic. This is a 10 out of 10, or at least a 9 out of 10 episode, in my opinion. It's really good stuff.
Yeah, I would agree.
Okay, so like I said, we'll be back next week. We'll be talking about season 1, episode 12, the rescue on Ryloth, if that's actually what it's called. Sometimes that's not exactly correct, but we'll be back then. In the meantime, make sure to follow us on Twitter at Tower Babblecast, facebook.com/Tower Babblecast, and head over to our website, towerbabble.ca, to find everything that we do. And we'll be back next week, and we'll talk to you then.